Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Reconnect podcast and TV show. Today, here we are at Njays Family Restaurant and we have the distinguished guest, Dr. Ted Msipa. Greetings and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for having me. Thank you to the wonderful viewers.
Thank you so much. Before we go any further, can we start with your educational background so that the viewers can understand? Before we delve deep into your journey, we should start about your educational background. Maybe from primary until high school, varsity.
All right.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. I hardly get asked that question. You're one of the few people with that kind of interest. But to answer your question, I was born in Zimbabwe, in the Midlands city known as Kwekwe. It was then known as the Now Town, in touch with tomorrow. That's where basically I did my primary education at a very interesting school called Mtonjeni Primary School. That's where I did my primary education, class 1 to 7. It was called Mtonjeni because it used to have a lot of pools around. So Mtonjeni is Ndebele for pools or for waterlogged places, basically. Then I did my high school in Zimbabwe, still in the same city. In the same city called Kwekwe, in that same village. We call them locations where I come from. It's not a village, but it's a location or high density suburb, which means where a lot of people stay, And so it was at Mbizo High School where I did my secondary education. I then proceeded and I went to do my high school. In my country, high school is Form 5 and Form 6. So Form 1 to Form 4, it is what we call secondary. So I did that in another city, but still in the same region, Midlands province. I went to a high school called Chaplain High School. That's basically about my education in terms of primary. I never went to preschool, by the way. In terms of primary to high school, that's what I did. But then I also did tertiary. And in tertiary, my first qualification is that of an accountant. I did a BCom in finance and accounting. So primarily, I am an accountant initially, because I really never operated much in that office. Then after that, I went to work for one of the biggest banks in Zimbabwe. It was called Barclays Bank. If you know South Africa.
What year was it?
Oh, those were early 90s, mid 90s. That's when I started working as a freshman.
Wow.
Then I worked for the bank for 12 years. And so in between, I was studying. And then I managed to study. I got to get a master's, an MBA from Royhampton University in England. I also got another master's,
Wow.
Which is a master's in strategic leadership. Should I continue or should we cut it?
No, please continue.
Then I happen to be a triple doctorate holder. That means I've got 3 doctorates. My first doctorate is in strategic leadership, and I also omitted another master's because I've got 2 masters, Master of Business Administration and Master of Strategic Leadership, which I did with the Americans, by the way. Wow. Then I also did my first doctorate is a doctorate in strategic leadership. Then my second doctorate is a doctorate in divinity. I'm also a doctor of divinity. That explains why I'm also in my other life a pastor. And then my third doctorate is in human resources. So that is basically about my education, done primarily by correspondence and online.
So the doctorates, when you were pursuing them, were you doing one after finishing the one you went for another, or at some point you were doing two doctorates?
To tell you the truth, I was doing one after another. The thing is that I'm a very tenacious learner. I am a very tenacious learner. Where a normal person needs 3 years, I normally need 2 years because I am an extremist. I always push myself to the limit. But you asked a very interesting question because as I'm talking to you, there is another doctorate which I have paused. The last time I was doing a doctorate, I was doing two concurrently,
Wow.
But the other one, I have made up my mind. I'm no longer going to pursue that one, but I'm halfway through. And just for the interest of the audience, it is a doctorate in finance. It is a doctorate in finance. But I find myself so much divorced from the finance and the accounting world because when I came to Lesotho, I really never practiced much in accounting, although I also took the opportunity to practice teaching. Actually, I became a lecturer for 12 years at Center for Accounting Studies. I was there for 12 solid years.
Wow.
But after that,
What years were they? It was from which year to?
from I think 2007 to 2019, 18 thereabout.
Wow.
That's when I was there. And so those were very interesting years. I am pro academics. I like thinking, I like learning, and I like challenging young people to learn. So those were some of my most exciting years because when you are passionate about school the way I am, if you were to meet people who are in my inner circle, my conversation is usually, what are you doing to develop yourself? How are you going to ensure that you're better today than you were yesterday? What is it that makes you have a cutting edge over the next competitor? I'm very, very, very huge on personal development and capacity building. Very passionate about those things.
Wow. Also, you started a company. Can you walk us through the journey?
All right. When we're talking about the company, I started a company when I was still in Zimbabwe. And the company is called Petted Financial Consultants. You see, the primary objective of the company was to empower. Let me not say was, because it is still vibrant, it is still alive. The primary objective of the company is to empower humanity to get to the next level of excellence. Like I told you, I'm passionate about capacity building, about making Africa better. I really loved it when we're talking off the record and you spoke about the need for Africa to recognize its own. I think we have a shared passion, you and I, on that space. Because I do believe so much that Africa is pregnant with purpose and potential. But the thing is that we really never write our own narrative. And as a result, the person who writes our narrative dictates how it comes out. But thank God for people like you who are going out of their way to make sure that you report the African story, you motivate the African story, because our story must be told by us, not by the man next door. The narrative usually favors the writer. That's how it is. That's why in the books of history, you hardly get to hear the exploits of men of color. I mean the brownies like you and I. You get to hear a lot about the exploits of the Caucasians. And for the record, I'm not a racist. But I'm simply saying that Africa has to have an African voice telling the African story. We know our story better, we can share our story better than when the man next door says it. He may choose to edit certain parts which may not suit his purposes. You understand? I hope you heard me.
That's um. So, for someone who wants to start a company or go into entrepreneurship, what can you say to them? The word of advice. Uh,
Wow, this is very interesting. I knew that this question was going to come at some point or the other.
yeah.
You know, a lot of people want to get into business. I'm big on empowerment, like I said to you. I'm very, very much pro empowerment, especially of the brownies like you and I, because for the longest time, history has disadvantaged us, and we have played second fiddle even in territories we own, even in nations which we call our own nations. So, this question is a very important question because Africa must do business. And what becomes important is firstly the purpose. Why do you need to do business? A lot of businesses, I say this with all due respect to my brothers and sisters out there, a lot of businesses are actually not businesses. They are self-employment initiatives. That's what they are. And the reason why they are there is not because somebody sat down and put a blueprint down to say, this is what I am going to become, this is what I seek to achieve. No, they didn't do that. They said, I am hungry. Why? Because I've been retrenched. I am hungry. Why? Because I'm unemployed. So, in order for me to survive, I must start a business. Baby boy, baby girl, that's a wrong reason to start a business. But thank God if you are in business because you were hungry, you are still in business. But the truth of the matter is that if we start a business from that perspective, it will not achieve its full potential. It will always be a hand to mouth business. You see, the most important thing about starting a business is that you need to understand your why. Your why is much more important than your what. It is much more important than your how. So the primary reason why somebody or anybody should start a business is because they are passionate about meeting a certain need. They are there to solve a problem. Every great business which exists is because it identified a niche and it saw an opportunity both to serve people and also to make some money. So somebody who wants to start a business must know their why. Very, very important. Why do you want to start that business? No, I see there is a challenge maybe in the transport sector. Maybe we are using too many 4+1s as an example. Why don't we do the Nigerian way? Why don't we do the Kenyan way, where they use a scooter which takes a couple of passengers less, which takes a little time to fill, which uses lesser fuel? You understand? You come in, you zoom in your lenses, and you begin to see where is the challenge. And when you see the challenge, you work on your blueprint. So every business you are going to start, I don't care, Mukotlong, Kachasnek, Tabatseka, whichever part of the Great Mountain Kingdom you are, the truth is that there are no original ideas. Most businesses we are having are modifications and variations. I remember when I used to do my MBA, I learned about very interesting concepts, what we call the red ocean strategy and the blue ocean strategies. You see, when we talk about the red ocean strategies, we're talking about you doing a business where the competition is cutthroat, where the competition is fierce. You understand? Like if you want to open a bank, you've got to know that you've got to deal with the green bank. You've got to know that you've got to deal with the blue bank. You've got to know that you've got to deal with the turquoise bank, and and so on and so forth. So that's a red ocean area. It's a red ocean strategy that you have to come up with, right? You're going to ask yourself, what is it that the turquoise bank does which I can do better, right? Then it becomes a point of entry. What is it that the blue bank is doing which I believe I can do better? Then it becomes a point of entrance into the marketplace, and so on and so forth. But my submission is that there is a red ocean strategy which you use when there is intensity in competition, and there is also a blue ocean strategy which you actually use when you are the originator of something, when you are creating something that you are the pioneer of that. Like the person who pioneered the telephone, he had a blue ocean strategy. So it's also very important when you are doing business to ask yourself, am I the originator of this idea? Is this niche virgin territory, or is this a territory of troubled waters? So as an entrepreneur, those are the questions you ought to answer. So my submission is that you must have a need which you believe the market has, and you must believe that you have a customized solution. And even if you have a customized solution, you must be able to. I wish you read the book by Sun Tzu-Yen. It's called The Art of War. Massive read. I strongly recommend it because it teaches you of doing business as if it is going to war. And it is. Because you see, you have to know your territory in a war setup. You have to know your enemies, in a war setup. And who are your enemies? It is the competitors. And who is the territory? It is the marketplace. You understand? So when you believe and you understand this, the companies which win or which get the job done are not the ones which are necessarily out of this world. They are the ones with a better strategy. That's why Shaka Zulu from the Difekane Wars in Southern Africa became the greatest general of his time. Why? Because he came with a master strategy, which was called the cow horn formation. And then he would have his army surround the opposition armies, and he retired the long throwing spear, and he invented the short stabbing spear, which was used like a knife, and he would surround the enemy and he would suffocate them, and as he suffocated them, he would be killing them. It's a strategy, and no wonder why the name Shaka Zulu will always be synonymous with victory. So the third point I am saying is that when you want to start a business, you must have a clear-cut strategy. And in your strategy, you should be very clear on where do you want to go in that business? Who are your constituencies? Who are your key stakeholders? Who do you want to serve? And how do they want to be served? Do you see this thing is detailed?
Yeah.
And yet a lot of people, they just say, I've been retrenched, I need to start a business. One of the hats I put is that of a business strategist. I have helped a lot of organizations to start up viable multi-million rand companies. And one of the things that I do is that I don't put emotions when I am talking about business, because business is not about emotions. Business is about perception. It is about mastering the big picture. You see, in business, you can't make the low table issues high table issues. You can't make the unimportant matters to become the important matters. So a lot of people, they just think that there is somebody who is waiting out there to buy their product. Then they just come with a shoddy product and they throw it into the market, and suddenly they lose all their pension. This is why if somebody is about to go on pension and they say to me, I want to do a business, I have a thorough interview with them, because chances are that they will fail. If you are to succeed in business, one of the things that I know is that you will fail when you get started. By the way, I'm not discouraging our listeners from starting business, but I want to keep it real. You see, usually the business you start with is not the one you will succeed in. You see, in business, you grow as you do. So you will begin to see that what I thought was not good is actually what is good. Because sometimes you reduce and restrict business to your emotional tastes. And you say, I think I like Papa and Dinawa. And then you begin to say, I want to flood the market with that. But maybe people like Papa and Dierekisi. And so when you deliver your Papa and Dinawa, they will ignore you. And then as a matter of survival, you begin to align yourself to what the people want. So it's also important that you know that you are in alignment with what the people need, not what you like them to need. You understand? Very, very important metrics right there. Because sometimes you like your food cooked in a certain way. And then you say, I'll cook it and I push it to the market. But the market will say, no, we don't eat it like this. We want it that way. So business, you really have to be willing to fail. If you are to do business, you have to be willing to fail. Brian Tracy, leadership and business guru, he submits something very interesting, but which I found over the years to be very truthful. He says that usually when you do business, you struggle the first 5 years, you struggle a lot. This is why you ought to have a vision casting session with yourself and your team members on a regular basis. Because when the passion sometimes feels like it's going down, when the motivation seems like it is fading away, what will keep you going is the vision that you have casted, which you have to look at and relook at, adjust, tweak, tamper with it, realign it with what the market is demanding from you. And when you do that, success will eventually come. But you have to know that if you are to succeed in business, you've got to pay a price. I call that the law of sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice in order for you to succeed? Sometimes what you need to sacrifice is your personal time. Sometimes what you have to sacrifice is your family time. Sometimes what you have to sacrifice are relationships which actually are very important to you. But for a season, you say, what is my big picture? My big picture is that I want to build a transgenerational organization. I want to build a company which long after I am dead and buried will speak and pronounce the message, as Beyonce sang the other time, I was here. I lived, I loved, I left my footprints in the sand. You know, I left the world a little bit better than I found it. So as an entrepreneur, you have to know that there is a price to pay. May I be a little bit crude? Success in business is not sexually transmitted. It is not. So you've got to put in a shift. You've got to put a brick today, another brick tomorrow, another brick the next tomorrow. You keep pushing, you keep bustling, you keep hustling. Sometimes you go without those nice techies you love. Sometimes you go without that beautiful Mercedes-Benz you crave. Sometimes you go without those social outings which you treat as hallowed ground. There has to be a sacrifice. If you are not willing to sacrifice, you will never reach the promised land as an entrepreneur. So you also have to have what I call shock absorbers. You know, when you are driving a car with good shocks and you hit a pothole, the shocks, they spread the effect or the impact of the shock nicely, and you won't even feel it. So as an entrepreneur, you've got to be willing to have shock absorbers, because you wake up today and the market dynamics have changed. Everything has totally taken a new shift. And when that happens, you don't know what to do if you don't have shock absorbers. You see, business is like faith. And my Bible defines faith as the substance of the things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. They are there, but they are not there. You see, because if you cannot have a picture in your heart, in your spirit, in your soul, in your mind, you can never get to the promised land in terms of business. So I said you need to sacrifice. You need to be willing to pay the price. If you cannot pay the price, forget it. Kiss your dreams goodbye, because bad days will come. But what will keep you going is making the big picture. The big picture. I like Steve Covey in his book, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. He talks about the big picture, and he says, keep the main thing the main thing. So that also brings me to the other point, which you will need to have to do in order to succeed in business. Don't do anything and everything. It's what we call the law of strategic focus. Do one thing to maximum impact. If you are cooking maquinya, know everything that you need to know about maquinya. If you are baking bread, know everything, from the quantities of flour, the quantities of the dough, the quantities of the oil, the temperatures that are necessary. Learn to master what you do. You see, my favorite book is called the Holy Bible, and it has got a very interesting submission in the book of Proverbs. It says, see and watch a man who excels in what he does. He will stand before kings, because his gift will create room. You know, there is no room that has a table that is empty. Every boardroom is full. Every important place is full, including the cabinet. It is full, including board memberships. They are full. But you know what? When you excel in what you do, the gift that you carry will begin to open doors for you. So I am saying, master one thing, master one thing. And when you master that one thing, hit on it. I have this saying which I normally love saying. I say, we do it so well like we're doing it for the television. That's excellence of execution. So you've got to excel by pressing on, by becoming the best. If it means you've got to go back to school, it's okay, baby boy. Go back to school. If it means you've got to go back to school, go back to school, baby girl. Become the best in what you do. When I say Cristiano Ronaldo, what comes to your mind?
Soccer.
When I say Mike Tyson, what comes to your mind?
Boxing.
When I say Nelson Mandela, what comes to your mind? Freedom, leadership, politics. You see, these people, it's not ambiguous who they were. You understand? When you do what you do it like you're doing it for the television, you do it excellently. Your excellence of execution will create room for you, and you will become the go-to, the Avogadro constant, the standard of how things are done.
You mentioned one of your favorite books is the Holy Bible. What are other books that you like, or the books that inspired you? You also came with the book. You cannot tell us more about it.
You know, the thing is that I am an avid reader of books. And sometimes I feel I'll do an injustice to some of the greatest books I have read. Because at my peak, I used to read 2 books a week. Wow. Every week I would hit 2 books. So as I'm seated before you, I have read over 1,000 books. I can safely say that. I've read over 1,000 books. I'm growing a bit older. I'm slowing down, but that's how much of a reader I am. And I hope it will challenge you. If an old man could do that, you are the younger generation. You can do better. That's the whole idea, to provoke you to the next level. Now, to answer some of the books that I really love, which I think are amazing books, I would go to Potential, Principle and Purpose by Dr. Miles Monroe. It's an amazing book. I would also talk about Think and Grow Rich. That's an amazing book. The Richest Man in Babylon is an amazing book. Then this one by Pastor Matthew Ashimolo, What's Wrong with Being Black? Then I'll talk about the capitalistic nigger. You know, the books are so many. Then there is also this one called The Outliers. Amazing books. And then the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by Dr. John Maxwell. An amazing man, an amazing leader. So that the list is quite endless, because that has also provoked me into writing books of my own. I do have a number of publications which I have also written.
You wrote publication, or you also wrote the whole book?
Yes, I think up to date I have written the following books. My first book is called Success is an Attitude. Let us meet at the top. That's my very, very first book. And it's an amazing attitude adjustment book, you know, where I talk about realizing that your attitude will determine your altitude. How you think is how you will shape up. You see, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So it's a very powerful book. I'm grateful to Corporate Lesotho. A number of leading companies, they have bought that book for their staff members, especially middle level managers. A good number of companies have invested in that book. They still continue to do that. For that, I'm eternally grateful. So that's one of my books. Then my other book is called The Marriage Masterpiece. The Marriage Masterpiece. It's a very interesting book as well, where I talk about marriage. I come out with all my guns blazing, and I say marriage is not a contract. Marriage is a covenant. And a covenant is sealed by blood. A contract can be simply annulled. In that book, I argue that the judge, whether it's a high court judge, a Supreme Court judge, has no spiritual authority. In other words, he has got no locus standi, the legal authority to dismantle or to disannul a marriage in the spirit realm, because he only has the administrative authority. So I talk about some very interesting things in that book. I talk about things such as soul ties. What really happens when you have sex? Some people think that sex is just the entrance of a male organ into a female organ, but it's much deeper than that, because sex opens spiritual gateways. And I talk a lot about that in that book. And I talk about also how to deal with parents. You see, which are the most important parents? The wife's parents or the man's parents? So I also have another book which is called The Next Level is a Reality. The Next Level is a Reality. It's a collection of my leadership and motivational submissions, where I talk a lot about paradigm shifting, changing of the mindset, so that you can become the leader people would love to go to. Then I also have the leadership tree, where I did a case study of 5 outstanding leaders in Lesotho, by the way. One of the most amazing leaders I have written about is the CEO, or rather MD of LNIG, Thapelo Johannes. Amazing leader. Amazing leader. You want to read about that? Get my book, The Leadership Tree. And then I've also written The Next Level is the Only Level. So these are some of the books that I've written, and I am pregnant with books. Many more are coming in December. I hope I'll come back to your podcast, because I will be launching 2 new books. So that's basically what I've been up to and what I've been doing. But what I really would love you to remember is that I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about taking you or any other person to the next level. I was born to make a difference. I was born to add value. I would have failed in life if I leave Lesotho one day the same way I found it. I would have failed.
Wow. So how do you manage your time? Like, you wrote several books, you read lots of books, you have done lots of doctorates and several masters, and you were a lecturer also. you have a family again. Like, how do you manage your time? Because people would say, like, they don't have time. Like, can you talk about time management? And
Well, you are talking about one of the most interesting subject matters. When you talk about time, I am also an executive coach. That means I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of politicians, a lot of CEOs. I mentor them. And one of the key points of mentoring them is time management. You see, the truth of the matter is that the rich man has 24 hours and the poor man has 24 hours. The most important thing that I've discovered with time is that you cannot manage time. Doesn't that sound controversial?
It is. So if you cannot manage it, what do you do?
What you do, you manage impact. That's what becomes important. There are what I call low table issues, and there are what I call high table issues. What are low table issues? These are petty matters, unimportant matters. As a CEO, I advise you not to deal with those. I advise you to deal with what we call the bottom line issues, the issues which provide real value. Like, let me just go to Vilfredo Pareto's theory, which is the 80-20 rule, or the 80-20 theory, which simply says that 80% of the revenue which an organization generates comes from 20% of its customers. In other words, the other 80%, when you combine them together, they provide 20%. So as a CEO, I would then advise you to do this. Get your math correct with the 20% who produce 80%. Because with 80%, you will survive. But with 20%, the ship will sink. You understand? What am I saying? Don't manage time, manage priorities. That's what you do. You manage priorities. You deal with the most important things. In his book, Brian Tracy, Eat That Frog Now, he talks about doing the most challenging things first. When you come to the workplace, when you have all the energy, don't do what excites you. Do what adds the most value. You understand? You focus on value creation. You don't focus on activity. So, to all the people who are listening to this podcast, I would like to say, stop being busy and start being effective. When you lead on the basis of priorities, you will create time for what matters. I love what this great man called Sir Richard Branson did. He was invited by Matty Hardy. You see, Matty Hardy writes one of the biggest success magazines in the world. And he decided one day to invite Sir Richard Branson. If you remember the guy who runs Virgin, including the Virgin Mobile, you remember that joke? Hey, I'm calling you from Virgin. Hey, when I'm on Oring, I'll give out the Virgin in Akinyezi, Kinalem Sadi. If you remember that guy. So this guy is an amazing guy. He got an invitation to come and be the keynote speaker at the Success Magazine show. And he was invited by Matty Hardy, and he was offered for 1 hour, my brother, 1 hour, my leader. He was offered 250,000 American dollars for speaking for 1 hour. Wow. Accommodation, flights, chartered jets, everything. It was sorted, catered for, right? But the guy, when he got the first invitation, he said no. He didn't even answer it. He didn't even bother to acknowledge it. I know if it was you and I here in Africa, we would have flown there in a jiffy and we were going to show up. But I'm trying to help you understand the law of priorities, right? So you see, Matty Hardy has got a huge ego. When Richard Branson didn't answer him, he doubled the figure. And he said, instead of the 250, I am requesting for your 1 hour, and we're going to compensate you $500,000 USD. Multiply that by 19 or by 20 in terms of our local currency. That's awesome money, isn't it? So when you look at it, this guy was offered 250. He said nothing. He is offered 500,000. He doesn't even say thank you. I've received your mail. But Matty Hardy, being the egoist that he is, he topped the levels, and he wrote a third letter, and he said, we are inviting Sir Richard Branson to come and preside over our seminar for 1 hour, and we're going to compensate him to the tune of $1 million. That's about between 18 and 20 million rand for 1 hour. Finally, Richard Branson took notice and he decided to respond through his representatives. And they said, dear Mr. Hardy, we are thankful for your deep and big thoughts concerning our principal, Sir Richard Branson. We are cognizant of your previous 2 letters, and the reason why we have not responded is because your request does not align with our strategic priorities. In this year, we're focusing on 3 strategic pillars. Number 1, this. Number 2, this. Number 3, this. And sadly, when we look at your request and your expectations, there is nowhere it will accommodate our 3 strategic pillars. And so this whole year, we are only going to be dealing with people and institutions which are going to feed into our 3 strategic pillars. However, your generosity has been noted and highly appreciated. Sadly, we have to say no. Our principal will not be able to make it to the invitation or to the seminar. You get the point. This man is not moved by an additional couple of millions. So this is why those who succeed, they have to focus on that one big thing or on their strategic pillars to say, if we say we're going to do this thing, we will do this thing. Because if they don't do that, then they will end up being like weeds. A weed, by definition, is a plant which is growing where it is not wanted. Doesn't mean it's a bad plant, but it is misplaced. So misplaced priorities will lead you into spreading yourself thin. I'm sure as a young man who grew up in the mountain kingdom, you have had the privilege of farming. And part of what I know from farming is that when you are planting orchard trees, usually there is a time when there are so many offshoots in the branches. And what we teach in agriculture is that you prune those little ones because they will be taking food which is not supposed to be theirs. And what are we saying? We are focusing on the big picture. We are making the big picture picture, the big picture. And in the final analysis, I think that's what really matters.
Wow. Your words are really inspirational. Some people, when they start the business, they involve, like, is it wise to involve your spouse, or you should just, like, yeah, can you talk more about that? You mentioned about marriage, like, should marriage in business, like, or yeah.
You want to put me on the spot? All right. The first thing I can tell you is that you're not married. And you will never appreciate the value of having a good spouse until you have one. Yeah, that's me pulling your leg right there. But the most important thing I would like you to understand is that women have got what we call the sixth sense. Women have got a better intuition than men. That's what I have seen. Maybe I talk from a personal perspective because I've seen it in my life and I've seen it in the lives of those who are within my inner circle, my sphere of influence. Because a lady, it doesn't matter, she didn't study what you studied. You may run an ICT company, and your wife may be a medical expert. But if you have challenges at the workplace and you begin to share with her, you will be shocked with how much insight she has inside of her. I do believe that it is very important to involve your spouse in doing your business. I've been business partners with my wife for as long as we have been married. By the way, I'm celebrating my 32nd anniversary next time around.
Wow.
I've been married to one lovely lady. She's Reverend Patience, and we have been married for 32 years. And it's like I met you yesterday. That's what happens when you have got a good spouse.
Any advice to people who want to get married, what they should look in a partner? And sometimes, like, people get married, the next month they're divorced. Like, any advice so that those divorces and the judges involved, like, what can be done before someone gets married, and if that someone is already married, any advice to them?
If they are already married, too bad. They are already married. The best thing that we can do is to pray for them, number one. Number two is for them to go for marriage counseling. It's always useful to go to for marriage counseling, especially if you get a godly marriage counselor, because they will do wonders for you. But to those who are not married, let me take off the gloves and keep it real. If you really are not married and you want to get married, I want you to know that marriage is a journey for a lifetime. And so do not make it based on long-term emotions. Your emotions and your feelings are chemical reactions. Today they are there, tomorrow they are not there. So don't base it on the looks. The looks, you see, somebody will say, I want this small, slender one, the Coca-Cola bottle figure, the portable one, the one I can carry to bed. Some will say, I need this one who is pear-shaped, and a number 8 who is balanced. All those things are good, provided the core things are there. And the best thing that a woman can ever bring to you, if you are a man, is a godly character. That's what really matters in a woman. Because beauty is like flowers. It will wither and it will fade away. But a good character keeps getting better and better and better. So if you are to get married, please don't measure the length of the yash of a woman. Measure the quality of her brain and tolerance levels. In marriage, there are so many opportunities to mess up with one another. But what will keep you together is godly character. You know, when you have a godly character, your spouse does not have to worry. What do you do when you are not there? Because the fear of God is much greater than the fear of a spouse. So it is very, very important that you consider godly values and godly character. That, I think, will cut it for the young people. And also look at shared values. If more of your values are shared, chances are that you will succeed in your marriage. And I also submit to you that the best marriage has to be a love triangle. I know when I say love triangle, I sound controversial because it's like there are two men fighting for one woman, or there are two women fighting for one man. But my love triangle is totally different. Marriage is not a man idea, and therefore man has no capacity to manage marriage until he knows the purpose of marriage. Remember, when purpose is not known, abuse is the order of the day. So marriage is a God idea. That's my modus operandi. In other words, that's how I operate. So if marriage is a God idea, I want you to think of a successful marriage as a love triangle. The man is on the left bottom side. The lady is on the right bottom side. And they all are climbing upwards to the very top, to the pinnacle. And when they are climbing, at that top there is God. So a successful marriage is actually anchored in God. That's what I believe, that's what I teach, and that's what somebody has to unconvince me. Especially given that I've been working my marriage in God for 32 years, I think I may not be a guru in marriage, but I think I deserve a little bit of respect when I share an opinion, because I've worked this thing for 32 years. One of the most difficult jobs you can ever have is managing a woman. If women were there in the house, they would agree with me. But you see, you have to respect women. Women are amazing people. Sometimes they want something, then sometimes they don't want it. Somebody said women don't even know what they want. But I think the most important is that when you are in a marriage, talk to your partner. Find out what makes them happy. In my book, The Marriage Masterpiece, I also have a chapter which I dedicated to love languages. You see, a lot of men lie to each other at the workplace. They say, you know, if you want a woman to love you, just to hold her breast, just to hold her behind, just to touch this and touch that. Listen, that might be the truthful position for you and your wife. You understand? But some women are not into the touching business. Some, they need some sweet nothings into their ears, and that's what turns them on. Some, they need that cuddling. So my point is, you don't know what your woman needs until you speak to her. So the greatest syllabus God ever gave to a human being is the syllabus called a wife. You should spend a lifetime learning to start your wife. Because if she is happy, a woman is an amplifier. you see, when you give her a little trouble, a woman, because she is created to amplify things, she is going to amplify that little trouble, and it becomes so big. And when it is so big, she will serve it at your doorstep, red hot. And you will say, but this woman, I just did a small thing, but look at what she is doing. That's who a woman is. It's just like when you give her a little bit of seed. You see, the seed you carry as a man, you cannot even use it for bus fare or for taxi fare or for a 4+1. That seed, if you say, I've got this seed, please, can I pay? They say, "Wahlanya wenamun." But what they do is that when you deposit that tiny little seed inside a woman will say, excuse me, baby boy, give me 9 months. I will work this thing. And after 9 months, you will see her coming to you, carrying a replica of yours, who is you, Junior. And she will say, here is your baby. But you didn't give her a baby. You gave her a little seed. So if you are wise, learn this. Women know how to amplify things. You give them little good things, they amplify those little good things. They give them back to you. That's how women work. So if you want to be a wise man, do little good things for the woman you marry. And she will do big things, because women are amplifiers. I hope this helps somebody listening out there.
Yeah, it does. What are your thoughts on polygamy? Is it bad? Is it good? Is the Bible against it? Full is one that.
Wow. I do believe with all of my heart that polygamy is not a smart idea. That's what I believe. I believe it's not a smart idea because what it does, it makes two people or share a piece of cake. Actually, 3 people or more share the size of a cake, which is meant for 2 people. What it means is that if the cake was going to bring 10 pieces or 10 slices, if we share it, now we are 3. If we were 2, we are going to get 5 pieces, 5 pieces. If now we are 3, it will reduce to 3 and a third, 3 and a third, 3 and a third. And let's make us 4. It will mean 2.5. Let's make us 5. It will mean 2. Let's make us 10. It makes us get smaller piece, smaller piece, smaller piece. So on the basis of rationale and common sense, I do think that polygamy is not a good thing. But also, the scripture is quite clear. It says that it is a good thing to stay single. But for the sake of your flesh, can I go deeper?
Yes.
For the sake of your flesh, it is important that each man should have a wife. You see, what happens is that a man is a seed carrier. A man produces seed, and that seed, he produces it over a lifetime. According to experts, I don't consider myself an expert in sexology. According to experts, a man produces 17 liters of semen in a lifetime. And I tell you what a man produces in 1 week is able to impregnate all the women in the world. And a man produces that seed on a daily basis, which means that a man is ready to have sex every day of the week. That's deep, ne? And so what then happens is that God, in his wisdom, created them, male and female. He didn't create male and females. He created male and female, which means when you are studying the Bible, we use the theory which we call the law of first mention. If you want to analyze what is God's mind on any subject matter, you look at it the first time it is introduced. So the first time when a woman is introduced in marriage, it was one man, one woman. I know some people will say Jacob had two wives, but Jacob never intended to have two wives. He wanted Rachel, and he got messed up and things got complicated. But the original law of first mention shows you that God wants one man to have one woman. Let me be honest with you. One woman is a lot of work to handle. Now, if you have two, that means it's a double portion. If you have three, it's a triple portion. If you have four, if you have five, you keep multiplying it. That's why I believe that when you get to be polygamous, yes, your sex delivery will be plenty, but what price are you paying for that? That's why some women will end up cheating, because they will be part of a roster. You understand? My honest opinion, and I believe the Bible supports me on that, a man should have a woman in his life, not women. Paul, whom I quoted earlier on, was a prolific apostle. In fact, he is the apostle practically designated for us who are non-Jews. He says it is best for a man to remain single, but because of your flesh, which produces too much seed. Now this is me adding my own words. It is best that a man should have a wife. I rest my case, sir.
Well, thank you so much for being on the Reconnect podcast and TV show. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
Well, I think the most important thing I may want to share is that you, my dear listener, you were born to lead, you were born to win, and you were born to add value. But in order for you to realize your full value, you must align your life to the life of the Master. What am I talking about? I'm talking about Jesus Christ, the ultimate leader. When you connect to Jesus, guess what? People will reconnect to you. When you are in Christ, you become the crowd magnet. You become the Avogadro constant. Follow Christ, and many will follow you. That's it from me.
Oh, thank you so much. We hope to invite you again in the future.
Thank you, sir, for having me. Thank you, wonderful listeners, for staying tuned to this podcast. I do hope it will add value and provoke you to the next level of excellence. Hasimara. Hasi ufela. Disakopane kiditaba. Lidzana dikopanaka mi riti fela. Sekile he shapa.